Hello and welcome to Comforting Hearts Conversations. My name is Ann Vlahos, your host and best-selling author of To Die For, The Gifts of Being Present Through Loss and Grief. Today, we're joined with Karen Noe. Welcome, Karen.
Hi there.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
You bet. I want to tell everyone a little bit about you. Karen is a renowned New Jersey-based psychic medium, a spiritual counselor, and a healer with a 2-year waiting list. She's the author of 3 books on the afterlife and mediumship. She is the owner and founder of Angel Quest Center in Ramsey, New Jersey, where she teaches classes, gives readings, and practices alternative healing. You can listen to Karen also on the Angel Quest radio show every month, which we'll be providing information on after we finish our interview here. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
I just really enjoyed meeting you. I know that we did a short class together after the publishing of your most recent book. And I just loved the way that you approached actually a topic that was very close to me, which is obviously death and moving on with a positive way through loss and grief. And your way of dealing with it offers some tools that I actually hadn't heard of really being spoken about much before, to really help to relieve, I think, the symptoms of grief, but also the mind, and easing your mind and your spirit and really kind of coming back to a space of peace. As we start, I'd really love to take a reading from one of your earlier books, which is Your Life After Their Death. And I loved it because I felt that it really showed a very similar thought process that I had when I started to explore death first, when I lost my grandmother when I was like 19 or 20. So I'm going to start here. Understanding what happens after we die is the chapter that it's in. And quoting you, I always use the analogy of water to explain this concept further. If we put a bowl of water in the middle of a room, it will eventually evaporate. The water is no longer limited to the bowl and is now free to go where it wants. It's the same with us. When we leave our physical bodies, the energy of who we are continues, but it's finally free of its vessel and is totally unconfined. A message that I often receive from deceased loved ones is, with a thought, I'm there. In other words, wherever they wish to go, you can get them there with just a single thought. After we leave our physical bodies, the souls are able to finally free their connections with everything and everyone. They're not limited to a physical body any longer, and they truly are free with no more pain and no worries. They only feel peace, they are peace and tranquility. They are limitless and finally able to experience their oneness with this source of infinite peace. My gosh.
And that's not something I think or believe. It's something I know without a doubt. And my wish is for everyone to understand that too.
Yeah. And, that's something that that you've said often, of without a doubt. And, I know that that's something that you speak about a lot. Can you kind of frame that up for us a bit about how you came up with that phrase and what you apply that to?
Yes. Many of my clients have received without a doubt signs, I call them, that your loved ones love to give you signs to let you know they're with you. But it's not, it's something that normally wouldn't happen. I call them without a doubt signs. Without a doubt, it's your loved one. There's so many things I could go into now. I don't know how much you want me to talk about here, but something like they love to use their energy to go inside of a bird, a ladybug, a butterfly, a dragonfly to let you know they're there. But they would do something that they normally wouldn't do, such as land on your head, peck at your window, something like that. Oh, this is unusual. Usually someone who receives this type of sign, they know it's a sign, even if they don't believe it. They never had that in the past, sorry. But these types of sign makes a person, a living loved one, feel amazing because they know without a doubt their loved one is with them. They're truly okay, and they want the living loved one to know that.
Mm-hmm. I certainly experienced that with both of my parents, and it was it was so apparent at one point. I almost was like, "Are you guys just showing off now?"
Once you pay attention, they'll keep going. Yeah, the signs.
They're right there, and it's always there. So that's really kind of neat. So I, in the story too, as I read that book too, you spoke about the the different things that you personally also have gone through, and that there's many different kinds of techniques and things. And in my book, the first chapter is the news, right? So I capitalize that because the news comes in various ways. And you spoke in particular in that book about a time that you got a phone call right before you had an important meeting to go to, and you found out, that it was the beginning of the, the final stages for your mother.
Yes.
And, you use an amazing technique. And I'd love you to talk to us a little bit about that. And it was EFT. Can you explain that, please?
It looks crazy. What it is, first of all, what happened was when I heard this from my mother, about my mother, I was ready to do a reading for someone who waited 2 years to come to see me. And they were on their way to come to see me. And I received this message on my cell phone, and I couldn't call the person to say not to come. So I had to practice what I preached. Now with my clients, when they come to see me, it's a healing. It's not just a reading. The living loved one is the one that needs to be healed. The one who passed truly is okay. Now, so with that said and done, oftentimes I use a technique called the emotional freedom technique, tapping. We have acupuncture points on our body that correspond to different emotions that we experience, especially negative emotion.
Okay.
If we tap on those points as we experience the emotion, we can move the energy out and you'll feel so much better. I know it seems simplistic, but I will tell you, there's nothing that would have stopped me from, I was hysterical. I said nothing could have stopped me from crying at that point and moving on at that moment. But I said, I have to. And I started tapping on the energy points. And by the time the women came to see me, I was smiling and I was okay. And from that moment on, I said, I have to teach the world about this because it truly works. I have people who come to see me. They've been in 20 years of therapy. We do one round of tapping, consecutive rounds of tapping in one appointment. And they said the tapping did in one appointment what years of therapy didn't even come close to.
Wow.
So what it is, I can't really get into it here. It takes a while to explain it. I have a chapter on it in the book, but I could tell you, you bring up the emotion of grief. You don't try to push it down. You experience the emotion. See, that's the difference. If you try to numb it, it doesn't work. You bring up the emotion up, and then you tap on the acupuncture points. You could actually go Google tapping with your partner, and you could find techniques on how to tap. And after you say words as you're tapping, like, I don't know what I'll do without you. I'm devastated. I feel so badly. And you just keep tapping and talking, and you tap on the energy points as you're speaking. And you keep going and you keep going. And I have seen so many people heal from years of grief. I did it in maybe 20 minutes. And
wow. To me, that's just so profound. And I'm not quite sure why it's taken me this long to get to this point. I've heard of EFT before, but not applying it to the idea of grief. And for sure, I know that, by holding emotions in, all that really is going to do is it's pretty toxic to your body, right? It turns into pains eventually and et cetera. And many people, the pain is so sincere that by bringing that up and just allowing it to move through your body is very difficult. But by having a way to actually physically help it move through rather than being just patient with it is just absolutely brilliant.
Well, see, here's the key. Sometimes the only times it does not work is if someone comes to me and they don't bring the emotion up and they're just saying, I'm so upset, I cannot take it. And you could just see they're not feeling the emotion. It doesn't work. Because what it does when you're experiencing the emotion, when I was hysterical crying, that was the best time to tap. Because when I was doing that, it went right to my acupuncture points. So as I was experiencing that emotion and I'm tapping on these points, it's moving the energy out. It looks silly. It really does, but it really does work. It's a long story. How I found out about tapping is a book fell off my shelf when I was going to work with a person who was experiencing post-traumatic stress. And I asked the angels, what should I do for him? And the book fell off my shelf, EFT, by Gary Craig, which had been on my shelf for a long time, and I never used this technique.
Just jumps up.
Really does work.
That's amazing. And so is there maybe, I know that some of the things that I've been seeing too, as I've done more of this work is there's people that have had maybe prolonged grief, right? Where that period of grief, it's just, many of us, they say the classic is to move through it in about a year, after you've gone through all the anniversaries. And that may or may not work. But some people have been in for it 2 or 3 years, or maybe they've had multiple losses, where it's just, you're really not over through the first year, and now you've got other very profound losses. With something like this, or is there other tools have you had experience with?
Well, first of all, I would say absolutely everyone processes grief in a different way. So to be patient with yourself and not to rush it. But this is the best way and the fastest way to move it, through. It really is. And it's not disrespectful to your deceased loved one. I've had people who come to see me and say, oh, but I need to experience this grief, or else, I should feel badly. And I assure you that your deceased loved one wants you to feel good again. And so this is a wonderful technique. You'll remember everything about them. You're not going to be forgetting them. It's just the horrible emotions attached to the grief and the loss and their suffering is dissipated. Very quickly.
That's amazing. Because I think sometimes when people are going through this too, other people, it's very difficult to watch someone going through grief.
Yes. But sometimes they want to experience that, and we can't push them,
No. Right, exactly. And so, not being able to maybe have an open discussion with someone about it, this would actually truly help, because it's helping to actually bring the emotions up, and like counseling normally would.
I would say something like, I have a technique that would work, but I have a box of tissues here. Are you ready to let it all out? And then they say, yes. Okay, we'll go for it.
Wow, that's great. That's great. So I know that in addition to that, you've also, have some sayings or prayers. Is there anything that you could possibly share with us that really kind of helps to, again, be a mode of healing?
Oh, that's a very good question. In my book, Your Life After Their Death, I pretty much summed up everything in something that's called Life Continues, if I may read it to you. And it sums up everything I've learned over the many years of doing readings. And this I know for sure. And this is what I wish everybody to know as well. You may not see your loved ones, but they are able to see you. You may not hear their precious voices, but they are speaking to you in your thoughts all the time. You may long to know if they're okay, but there's no need to worry because they are in a state of total bliss. You may believe that you didn't have enough time to spend with them, but they can now be with you whenever they so desire. You may not realize when they're around you, but they are sending you without a doubt signs all the time. You may be worried that they're still in pain, but they're in a place of total peace where suffering does not exist. You may not comprehend why everything happened the way it did, but they are able to see the broader perspective and understand it all perfectly. You may think they left this earth way too soon, but they know it was their time to make the transition. You may feel guilty about certain things you did or didn't do to them, but they are able to see through your eyes and understand your actions completely with no judgment. You may be preoccupied with how they lived, but they want you to remember how they died. You may be hesitant about moving on with your life, but they want you to step forward and be happy again. You may believe that you'll never see them again, but you will join them again many years from now when you leave the physical body.
Wow.
And you may feel that a part of you died after they made their transition. But in reality, life continues for the both of you.
Yeah. Wow. That's beautiful. That's so beautiful.
So true.
It is. I remember very specifically when my mom passed away, it was a pretty tragic event. She got burned while she was making lunch. And then we had her for 5 weeks dealing with that until, she transitioned. And it was very enveloping. 5 weeks, I was away from my family. I was there all the time, very vigilant, trying to kind of, struggle through it, trying to make meaning while it was happening. And it just didn't. And when she passed, it very much felt like, you had to just give up. But then as time goes on, I think it was probably somewhere around maybe like the 5-month mark, I started to realize that she had moved from that physical avatar of herself to being into my heart, so, she was alive and then she died and there was the body. And then when she died, there was the grave and the tombstone. And that was a bit of an avatar. And then she lived on a bit through her things. You know, I could still smell her in her clothes. But then something really kind of switched. And then I did come to that exact realization as part of, you know, that beautiful prayer that you just read. That was, I realized that she was in my heart, and it reminded me very much of like when I had kids, right? I mean, you're a mom.
Yes.
When you're pregnant, you know that you carry them everywhere with you, right? They go everywhere with you. And you can talk to them, you can touch them. And do you remember that first time when you left your first child home alone and you went out without them? Wow, right? It's a feeling of separation. And so it's almost like going in the other direction, where you are, you know, you're now incorporating them back and kind of, you know, in you know, inserting them or investing them back into your heart. And they're as close as ever, right? There's no physical distance anymore, and you can talk to them anytime.
Absolutely. And they can hear you.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Speak to them. They can hear you.
Yeah. They sure can. They sure can.
The most important thing is to understand that when they're speaking to us, oftentimes they speak to us as thoughts, telepathically. So we have to recognize that. We think they're coming as an apparition or an audible voice, but they don't have a physical body. So they're likely to be speaking to us telepathically.
Very interesting.
Yeah, when you're thinking about them, it may be them speaking to you rather than you thinking about them.
Mm-hmm. So how is that received when you start to share that with people, that, hey, you know, that wasn't your thought, that was probably your mom telling you, or your dad, or your daughter, or whatever?
No, they say, how do I know the difference between my thoughts and theirs? And this is how. Their thoughts will just pop in your head for no reason. You'll be sitting there, so a thought will pop into your mind. You'll say, why did I think of that? Whereas your own thoughts about your loved one, something will trigger a thought, that'll trigger a thought, and so forth. You'll find an originating thought. For example, when my mom passed, I started to feel a thinking, hi, sweetheart. I don't call myself sweetheart, but she called me sweetheart. See? And I knew that that's how they speak to us. Most people don't.
Yeah. It is kind of interesting, right? I mean, I remember those things as well too. And, you know, for me, it was the thought, it was songs, you know. I remember for my mom's funeral, you know, we were picking out, you know, passages and songs, and I picked out a Cat Stevens song. That was the exit, and I'm sure everybody was like, what is this song and why'd you do that? But it was, you know, it was Morning Has Broken, which was beautiful, right? Yeah. You know, and I don't even know why that popped into my head, but she was so into, you know, gardening and everything, and there was just something that really resonated with me. And, you know, so she passed away in 2007 when Cat Stevens was long off the international stage. And, you know, I drove in my car a lot for work, and that song kept popping on. I'm like, this is unbelievable. But, you know, then of course you start to recognize, oh, hi, you know.
Without a doubt sign.
Yeah, you start to recognize it and pull it in. You're like, hey, oh my God, thanks for being here with me. So it's a beautiful thing. So are there any other thoughts that you might have about how to reconnect? You know, so it's listening to your thoughts. What are a couple of other ideas?
Well, I would tell everyone to make sure to understand that it's not just Karen Noe who could do this. We all can. We all have this ability to ask our loved ones to give us those without a doubt signs. You know, be patient and wait, and the signs will come when you least expect it. Don't force it. It'll happen. Ask them to come to you in a dream and then to wake you up after the dream so that you remember it. That's very important too. But it's important to realize the difference between a true visitation from them and your subconscious. So if you're dreaming of your loved one and it's loving, positive, they look wonderful, they're not suffering, that's a true visitation. If you're dreaming of your loved one and they're angry at you, or you see them in a coffin, that's your subconscious trying to resolve the issues. That's not your loved one. So it's you have to understand the difference between the two. They would never frighten you, or they would not be angry at you because they're in a place of total love and peace.
Right. It's interesting because I think, you know, many people that, especially as we get into younger generations, maybe who haven't been brought up with a strong framework around spirituality, that when they have a loss, they're at a bit of a loss. And you start to see them edge out a little bit and say, well, was that a butterfly came? Was that my mom? Or I just saw this. And I find that really amazing, that it's an opportunity to really, where you really are so emotionally open at a time, I think, when you lose, that you begin to actually think a little bit about that and wonder about that. And I think part of having these kinds of dialogues, my intent is to help people realize that you're not crazy, and that's really normal, and it's actually a really beautiful thing, and embrace it and allow it to, allow it to go where it goes.
Exactly. And it would be, the sign would come in the fashion that your loved one, like they retain the same personality. So if they were very loud, they'll be loud in their signs, if that makes sense. If they were quiet, it'll be a little bit more subtle.
Uh-huh. So give me a good example of a loud in their signs.
Oh, I had a friend, Marion, who was very loud and sarcastic in her, when she lived here in the physical plane. And right after she passed, I wrote her a letter. Now, I would tell everyone listening to write your loved ones a letter, telling them how much you love them and so forth. And at the end of the letter, say, give me a without a doubt sign to let me know that you're aware of what I wrote to you. So I did that for Marion. 2 days later, I'm walking down my steps to my house, putting letters in my mailbox. And as I'm walking down, in my driveway, a bird was screaming. And when I say screaming, at the top of its lungs, "Wah!" like that. And I immediately knew it was Marion, right?
Yeah.
So I said, Marion, I love you so much. And she continued to scream. Now, how you know it's a without a doubt sign? I walked to my mailbox, and the bird flew to the mailbox. On the mailbox, looking directly at me, screaming. Birds do not do that.
No.
So I'm looking at the bird. I said, Marion, I love you so much. And she's screaming. I look behind me, and my neighbor's looking at me thinking I'm totally nuts.
Oh,
right?
yeah, of course.
Took out my cell phone. I called my son. I said, quick, come out here. Marion's here, to tell my son. He said, what? I said, just come outside and look. And he witnessed the whole thing.
Oh, that's great.
A day later, a mutual friend of Marion and myself, she calls me and she says, you're not going to believe what Marion did. I said, what did she do to you? I'll tell you what she did to me. She said, Karen, I just painted my kitchen. I opened the sliding glass door. A bird flew in my house, pooped all over my walls, and then flew out. And she said, thanks, Marion. She knew it was Marion because it was in the fashion that Marion was. She always played practical jokes. So there you have it. But if your loved one was quiet, they wouldn't do something like that.
Yeah, yeah. My dad was always very kind of playful. He loved to, joke around a bit. He had that lighthearted personality. And after he passed away, I was alone in his house with his youngest brother. And he was helping me with the music and, picking the music and the words and the passages for my dad's funeral. And I realized I had to take some trash out to the curb. It was garbage night. And I went to go out the front door, and I turned the light on for the front porch so I could see. And as soon as I turned it on, the light shut off. And I just said, oh my gosh, what a poor time for this light to go out. I can't believe it's out. And I'm going and it's out. And as soon as I stop touching it, it goes on and it goes off and it goes on and it goes off. And I'm like, oh, Dad, hi. Oh, wow. And I call my uncle over. I'm like, hey, Dad's here. And he's kind of like, really? Okay. You sure? And I'm like, I'm so sure. I said, say something. And he says something and the light starts flashing.
Oh, I love it.
And I was just like, this is so cool. I said, but he's been coming to me so much. He was so wonderful about letting me know right away he was there. And so I said, well, you talk to him for a little bit. I'll take the trash out and I'll come back in. So as I'm taking stuff out, I'm seeing the light flashing and I'm seeing my uncle pace back and forth in the kitchen. And then I come back in and, and I said, hey, so how's it going? He goes, well, I think it went really well. And I said, I think we're complete. And I love it. This was great. And I just want to say thank you. So I just turned to the light and I said, okay, Dad, hey, thanks so much for coming. And then the light blinked twice and then it went back on. And I was just so grateful. I mean, it was without a doubt, beyond a doubt.
You knew, and a person who receives a sign, they know it.
Yeah, you do.
And then was able to play with energy because he is energy.
Yeah, exactly. And light, what a beautiful metaphor, right? But like with your son too, just having someone to witness one of those things, it just, I'm not crazy here, I'm really seeing something. And so that was a good sign for me that I thought I really had to start writing a book and telling some of these stories in between because it's really pretty profound. It's nice. So last I wanted to talk a little bit about the We Consciousness book that you've written, We Consciousness, 33 Profound Truths for Inner and Outer Peace. And I'm in the process of reading that, which I I think what I really love about it is that it's really about just getting to that point of transcendence, really, right? You just really are, and then allowing that stillness to be the thing that speaks.
Well, yes, it's pretty much about understanding that we are all one, and that oneness includes everyone and everything, including animals and nature and deceased loved ones and angels and so forth. But we don't feel that oneness when we're in the physical body. After we leave the physical body, we're able to feel that oneness immediately because we're not separating from each other.
Right. It ends separation.
Whatever we do to ourselves or another, it affects the whole because we are all one. So that's pretty much what it's a lot. You know, I go into a lot of detail on it, but it's pretty much about uplifting the consciousness of the planet because it's very needed right now. If we change ourselves, we could raise the vibration. Each one of us, we could make a difference and create peace in the world around us, and in the world as well.
Yeah, I think the thing that really struck me too was the beautiful transition from the I am to the we are.
Yeah.
And I think that's it's a really good time for that. It's a really good time in the world for that. It's the perfect time. And there's a little bit of a backstory about, you're writing this book, but you didn't write the book alone.
Well, yes, that's correct. What happened was, very long story short, for those who know Dr. Wayne Dyer, after he made his transition, he started to come to me, and I said, you have to give me a without a doubt sign. And he did give me, it's too long to get into for a short conversation here. He gave me a huge without a doubt sign. It was a sticker that said WE on it that somehow attached itself to the inside of my shirt. And I thought it meant Wayne, first letter, last letter. I later learned it was we consciousness, which he later on combined with a group consciousness called the We Guides, which incorporated him, St. Francis of Assisi, the angels, and so forth. And I had been connecting with his family, all of his children. He has 8 children and his wife as well, giving them very specific messages so they knew without a doubt that it truly was him coming through.
Wow.
That's to make a long story short.
Yeah, but what a beautiful story, right? Because this is something it's a message that, you've worked with, your physical consciousness as well as his consciousness, as well as the other consciousness to bring this all together. So it's, I don't know, I just found it to be really, really lovely.
Thank you.
You bet. You bet. So any parting words that you'd love to share, words of wisdom for our listeners about your thoughts about this whole process of loss and grief and the gifts that we can find?
I want everyone to understand that we all could do it. It's not just about Karen Noe, that my purpose is to empower people to do what I do. Understand that your deceased loved ones are talking to you all the time. They come to you mostly as thoughts. They could come to you in dreams, without a doubt signs. So to trust the process, be patient and wait, and the signs, the dreams, the thoughts will come when you least expect it. They want you to feel good again. So it's not disrespectful. So do whatever it takes, any technique that works to process this grief. But yet if you want to continue to experience grief, don't feel guilty. Everyone's different and processes grief at a different time.
Oh, that's beautiful. Do you happen to have your book with you, Your Life After Their Death?
I don't have it in front of me.
I only have it on my Kindle, so I can't really hold it up either, but I'm going to make sure that it's included in our comments below because it contains a very different and very practical, easy to use tools for you to help move through grief. And I really encourage people to read that book. It's a very clear how-to get through things for yourself in a really, really positive way. And it's quite a gift. So it's been an honor to talk to you today. This was a had to happen kind of a conversation. So thanks so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
You bet. And now can you tell us how we can stay in touch with you, your website, your radio show, et cetera?
Sure. My website is KarenNoe.com. That's KarenNoe.com. And I have a radio show the first Saturday of the month. It's HudsonRiverRadio.com. Everything's on my website. You can see, classes that I offer in Waldwick, New Jersey, and so forth. And that's it. I travel, I do classes, and so forth. That
sounds great. Well, I'm sure you're getting some good reaching out for both the books, but also I think for your classes. So thanks again, and thank you to you, our listeners, for joining us on Comforting Hearts Conversations today, where we take on the tough subjects to help you navigate your own pathway through loss and grief. So again, from our hearts to yours, thank you so much for joining us, and have a great day.